Welcome back to 8 Cubes, the show where we talk about the most important topics in Marvel Snap. I'm KMBest, he's Lamby series. We're going to start things off with The Thing, who is a unique and powerful 5-cost card. The first two things are good. The last thing is not so good. Unique and powerful, good thing to be. 5-cost card, not a great thing to be. So, where do we think The Thing himself is going to fall? This is a 5/6 that gains 2 power at the end of every turn and once per game. If his lane is full, he will blow up a card in your opponent's side of the location that he's on permanently. It goes away as long as it has less power than he does. What do you think about this card as a baseline card compared to other 5s in the game? And then, do you think it's good enough to see play despite being a 5?
Yeah, so I actually rate this card pretty highly, honestly. Like, the thing about this card is that we all know Shang-Chi is good, right? Because it blows up a 10 or greater. This card has the flexibility of just being decent stats. I'm assuming it's like gonna be about 5/8, right, on average. So let's say 5/8 or something. This card can blow up like pretty much any mid-range card, like it just like evaporates the card. And that's like your opponent losing all their stats that they invested for that one turn. So I think this guy is honestly very strong. I guess the downside is it's random, right? It's random. So if your opponent wants to counter this, on the final turn, they play a really small guy in that location and it might blow it up. But obviously that's not within their control as well. So obviously there's going to be some amount of RNG involved with this card. But in general, the stats are fine. You get to blow up a card that's smaller than this, which is like less than 8 power, which is good, right? So I think this card can find its way into not like, because we look at the Fantastic Four package as like maybe like a one deck, like they're all supposed to be in the same deck, that kind of thing, right? This card probably can go into many different decks. Like it just goes in as a splash 5. Like Legion was a splash 5 in the past, Cannonball not so much, but similar context, it was played in multiple decks as well. I feel like the thing can be put into multiple decks for sure.
So here's the thing. I think that there are problems with being a 5. And I realize that this is a 5 that exists in a good space, right? It's a 5 that is bigger than 10 in terms of actual impact, but cannot get Shang-Chi'd regardless. The problem is I don't think it pushes those boundaries enough. When you look at something like a 5 that is bigger than 10 but can't get Shang-Chi'd, you look at like an Ajax, right? Like that's sort of the archetype of that. This is a big guy who can win a lane on his own. The Thing, sort of by definition, if you want him to be bigger than that 10 and not be Shang-Chi'd, you cannot play him early because he will then be Shang-Chi'able. And you need to invest in the lane further for him to win it on his own. So he's not going to be able to win a lane on his own. And those two specific things are the things that I don't love about the way this card is set up. Because I do think it has the rest of the ingredients necessary to be a good 5-drop. I just think that, like, it's not being pushed to the extremes enough to make it permanently, right? I think people will play this card and it will be pretty good. And I think that, like, the Marvel Snap devs have shown a real willingness to just make good cards, and they are good enough. And we'll talk about that a little more in part 3 of this episode. But I think that, like, they are making cards that are at baseline good enough for people to play and not feel embarrassed about a lot of the time. And that's a really good thing to be doing. I just think that, like, long term, I don't have a lot of belief that this guy will be able to fill a metagame role. I think he'll be fine, but, like, maybe a little worse than Legion. And the problem is I would want him to be better than Legion. I feel like if I'm going to go get this guy, if I'm going to pay for this guy, I would want him to be better than the card I probably already have. And I'm not positive he's better than Legion. I'm not positive he's better than, say, Hellion, right? There are other 5s that fit this profile that I don't think he gets big enough to eclipse them. With that in mind, let's talk a little bit about Human Torch First Steps, a card that I think after playing with, was lower on than, like, most of the rest of the community, it feels like. Like, I played with this card and I was like, this is a cool card, but it is not a card you, like, fundamentally cannot play any decks without having at this point. My read on Human Torch First Steps is that if you are playing a Surfer deck, it is the 3rd best buff target behind Brood and Captain Carter. And I don't think that anyone is going to look at you and say you can't play Surfer without the 3rd best buff target. I think that's just like a totally fine thing to not have. And I tried it in a bunch of buff decks, and it is more indispensable there, but those decks aren't good enough for it to be indispensable there being something that matters to the metagame, if that makes any sense. And so we arrive at a card that I think is a very hyped, very good card. And again, we'll talk about this in part 3, but I don't necessarily think that that equates to it is a worthwhile expenditure when you really get cold-hearted about it. I think it just goes in decks that are already quite good and is a good enough card in those decks that you don't feel bad about having bought it or played it, but there are probably higher priority purchases along the line to build up to those decks, like Mr. Fantastic First Steps or any of the other cards in Surfer that are doing what it does.
Yeah, I mean, the card is okay. You call it the third best buff target. So
Yeah.
the first two are obviously like Brute and the third best buff target, but it's the third best by far. Like it's a lot lower than the
Yes.
first two, right? Like it's way lower. So your comment about the whole thing whereby you don't actually have to play the card, I totally agree. Like you actually don't even have to. And also this card being the third best, and it's also only gonna go into that deck, you know. So it kind of makes it so that it's very, yeah, like you wouldn't miss out much, right? You wouldn't feel too bad about not having the card. So like even at higher levels of play, it's not like without this card you are getting shortchanged by your other players playing the same deck. You know, it's not that kind of card. So I can totally see this card being a skip. I wouldn't say easily, but definitely a skip even if you just want to play like Good Surfer. It's like Good Surfer now doesn't need this card.
It's a cold-hearted skip. It's not an easy skip, right? And I think that like that is a relevant dynamic to talk about because like the thing that happens a lot in Marvel Snap, I guess it's time to just move on to the next topic because this is something I've been wanting to try to figure out how to parse for a little bit. There's a thing that happens in Marvel Snap because like the devs are very good at making good enough cards. They're good at making cards that at least for the first week are good enough to win games. And as a human being, there are a million things that can cause you to have an incorrect opinion of how good a card is. And if you're wrong by just a bit as a content creator, what you end up doing is over-recommending a fine card or under-recommending a really good card. If you're just off by a little bit in that first read, right? And it's unfortunate that the content system asks us for immediate reactions. It's unfortunate that like that is what people actually want from us, is this immediate reaction. Is this a good idea or not? And that is fundamentally the reason for that is the way in which cards are monetized in this game. But it does create also this hype cycle where what happens a lot of the time is a good card will come out, people will put it in a good deck, and then they'll be like, look at how good this deck is. And that card may be a tertiary contributor to that deck. So what I'm trying to do is do a better idea of, have a better idea of when that is happening, right? I think that multiple decks I've been throwing water on this season. I've been throwing water on the idea that you need to buy Human Torch to play Surfer. You can just very easily play Sebastian Shaw. I've been throwing water on the idea that Fantasticar is a good deck at all, that you need the Fantasticar card for anything. And I think I'm going to continue to try to do that. But there is a card that I don't feel like I can throw water on, but I still think might be a little bit overhyped. And that is Mr. Fantastic First Steps. Because I think that card is great. It's a great card. You put it in a bunch of decks. It has basically no downside. It asks you to do very little. But like, it's being played a lot. There's a lot of Mr. Fantastic-y mid-range out there that has been taking up metagame share from Merlin-y mid-range. And frankly, I don't know if that's correct. I think that might be a product of the hype cycle more so than an objective, clear-eyed view of how relatively strong these cards are. So what I'm trying to get across here is I think Mr. Fantastic is fantastically strong, but also still a little bit overhyped. He's very good, but he's a little bit overplayed, a little bit overhyped, and a little bit overrated. And I don't mean that to say that he's not a card that is worth complaining about, because he definitely is. But the same amount that Human Torch is a little bit overrated, Mr. Fantastic is a little bit overrated too. It's just like what people are saying about Mr. Fantastic is he's the best card in the game. I don't really think he is, but I do think he could very easily get a nerf. He's like a nerfably good card. You could 2-1 him pretty easily. But I also think that he is pretty far from like exclusively the GOAT, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's the best card in the game. Also, you guys know where I stand when it comes to Merlin, right? I rank Merlin so highly as a card. So I feel like Mr. Fantastic First Steps, honestly, is one of those cards whereby you, like you said, part of the hype cycle, and also the fact that like because it makes you play certain specific decks, right? Like because it's like way better in certain decks than others. So you would probably want to like play those decks because of like the card being released or whatsoever. And Merlin just gets the kick because there's like no space. Obviously if you can play everything you would, but Merlin gets the kick because there's no space. But in terms of versatility, like I really want to talk about versatility of a card. I feel like Merlin is still slightly more superior when it comes to versatility, And I think one more thing is because when like you said, when cards get released, right, and then like people all look to content creators to like, oh, is this like should I buy this? Do you think it's good? I mean, a lot of the times we have an idea, right, because we think about the game, but like we don't know for sure as well. Like I mean, both KM and I have gotten cards wrong as well. So at the end of the day, use that as a reference, not as a Bible, textbook, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, like I got Mr. Fantastic wrong. I was low on him, right? Like that's a card I thought was going to be a little worse than Surge. It ended up being significantly better than Surge. It's a very strong card. But I also think that like it's very much in line with Merlin in the sense that Merlin is asking more from you in a deck building sense, but is contributing more commensurate to that ask that it's giving you, right? And Mr. Fantastic is asking nothing from you in a deck building sense, like very little. The most it's asking is run cards that are good with getting buffed, right? It's just not a big ask compared to like playing a Sentry in order to make Merlin turn that thing into a 5, right? That is a much higher risk, higher reward play than anything Mr. Fantastic is going to do. But Mr. Fantastic will never do anything as bad as putting a -9 on your board in deck building, right? And so that is the dynamic between them. But I think if you average it out, they end up extremely close. And it's been slanted in favor of Mr. Fantastic recently, largely because he's new and exciting and people want to explore the parameters of him and not because of an objective measure of power that puts him above Merlin. Let's talk a little bit about the metagame as a whole, which feels fairly open right now. And I think that in all of the controversies around Marvel Snap, there is one department that my faith in has never wavered, and it is the card and balance guys. And I realize that's a little bit of a weird take, but once I started to understand like what it is that they're actually balancing for, i.e. not specifically me, it sort of started to make a little more sense to me. And now I am fairly confident it's like, okay, these guys are like actually quite good at their job. But they have made one really interesting change that I'm using interesting as a potential pejorative here. Buffing Misery. Like, I get it, but also it has ushered in an era where like the thing that's keeping this meta good is the churn between these Surfer, Juggernaut, Cosmo decks and like Misery, Hood, and Shadow King decks. And like the interplay between those, like that is a very interesting matchup to play because of the way both players can choose to either interact or not interact with each other while maintaining large pressure in terms of points. And that is sort of the foundational matchup of this metagame to me, is like various Surfer piles, various piles of things like that versus various Shadow King, Misery, and Hood piles, right? And I guess I wanted to get your take on where you were at in terms of Shadow King, Misery, Hood. Would you consider yourself a mid-range gamer? Where are you aiming yourself these days?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely as much as I don't want to be called like a mid-range main or whatever, but I definitely prefer mid-range decks in this sense, whereby there's interactivity, right? Like, I like the fact that decks interact. So the current state of the meta has a lot of interaction with each other, not just your own self. Interacting with your own self is basically playing combo and not caring what your opponent is doing. So yeah, I kind of like where the meta is right now because you are fighting. Like I always mention this term, like you and your opponent are both playing decks. They're actually fighting with each other, and that's like playing a card game, right? You're trying to beat your opponent, so there's interaction. So that's good. Like I like the meta right now. The thing about Shadow King is that it's very interesting because when he's not good, he's gone. He's not even in the game, like he's not even being played. But when he's good, he's efficient as heck. He's a 2-cost card. He's a 2-cost card that obliterates your opponent's strategy. And now Shadow King does obliterate strategy. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I will never say that he is as difficult or like as upsetting to lose to as Shang-Chi. I don't know, it's just the idea of your guy that's 10 or more being blown up compared to your guy being shrunken. Just the idea of it. I think blown up always feels worse. Like I don't even know what that like means or like why that feels the case, but I'm pretty sure that getting your guy blown up feels worse than getting your guy shrunken. And that's how I feel anyway. So that's just my take on like the feeling of losing to either card. But yeah, I do think that Shadow King is very relevant and present in the meta right now, and Yeah, I mean, just fit it in your deck and you should be fine. I like the card. I like that it's relevant right now, but obviously, Shadow King is also one of those cards that, like I said, will go away very quickly the moment the meta shifts away from cards that are affected by him.
I actually think that you came up with something that I think is pretty cool there, and I'm gonna move on to the OTA wishes topic, but I'll revisit this. OTA wishes, that is a great pitch for Shang-Chi. Actually, what if Shang-Chi just said, for every 10 plus card they had, cut it in half?
Ooh, then I feel so basically, if they have a 10 power card on the board, it becomes 5 power.
Yes. That feels
maybe
way less awful, right? Yeah, you could increase Shang-Chi's power, but like, yeah. Like that I mean, like what if he's like a 4/6 with that ability? That way he still beats 110 straight up.
True. It's still like, let's say he's a 4/5, so you cut a 10 in half, it's like a 4/10, right? In terms of like total stats. I guess that's okay. It's obviously worse than the Shang-Chi we have right now. But obviously it feels way less to lose to if that were to be the effect. But I don't know if it will be. I don't know if it's doing Shang-Chi justice. Like is it too big of a nerf? I mean, like saying doing Shang-Chi justice, people will just hate me for that comment. Doing Shang-Chi, no one cares about Shang-Chi, right? But like, yeah, I mean that's something that I think I can see. I can see that being an okay change to the card. I mean, it's definitely a nerf.
Yeah. Like, it's just one of those things that's been kicking around in my head where it's like, okay, so this is a card that has been answering stuff forever. I'd like to see it dinged slightly just to see what happens, because I'm typically a Shang-Chi defender. I don't really think he deserves to be nerfed. I think he does good things for the metagame. But I also am not confident that taking him to 2 power would meaningfully change anything he does for the metagame. You know what I mean?
I don't think it does anything, right?
I don't think it does anything, especially... Yeah, like, especially in a world where the world we live in, which is one with Merlin in it, like, oh yeah, my 4-drop that I'm transforming anyway just became a more guaranteed thing to polymorph into a 5. Like, okay, it's going to be fine, right? I'm still going to play shit.
On that note, I actually kind of want to say one thing real quick, which is like, what does 1/1 Zabu do? Like what
it's made people, like, stop playing Zabu a little bit, which is the real advantage of an OTA.
I mean, but like, okay, so the fact that people stop playing 1/1 Zabu in their decks that need Zabu to begin with, it just further amplifies the fact that when anything gets nerfed, people just think bad card, right? Yep. Like this has been going on for years, right? Everything a card loses 1 point. Heck, if a card could lose half a point, you would probably stop playing it as well. But like, it's just the thing, like 1/1 Zabu doesn't suck. It's still Zabu. The effect is the same. It's 1/1, I know, but it's still insane. Like, it still makes you play your 4s on 3. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way. Like 1/1 Zabu is still something that you would play. It's like 2/1 Cylon. You played 2/1 Cylon when you had to play 2/1 Cylon, right?
I want to be clear. It's not that people are not playing Zabu in their Zabu decks. It's just they're playing less of the Zabu decks. So they're switching.
The Zabu decks are still good.
Yes. So here's my grand sweeping reform platform. All right. Okay. These are the ones I feel are non-negotiable. We're taking a point of power off of Mr. Fantastic. We're taking a point of power off of Surge. We're taking a point of power off of Gwenpool. And frankly, we're taking a point of power off Galacta. Am I overdoing it? Maybe. I don't care. We are also going to take a point of power off of Enchantress. We are also going to consider taking a point of power off of Shang-Chi. These are the things I would do to consider changing the texture of the metagame. I'll tell you what else I might do. I would look very hard at nerfing Shadow King once this stuff has already happened, because a lot of the good targets for Shadow King, like a lot of the reason for Shadow King to be as good as he is that this stuff all exists, right?
Cool.
So I would look harder at basically trying to apply more of a tax to reactive tech in this game and trying to allow proactive answers to that tech to flourish. Because I think largely things that are like, what I don't want is everything to be turn 6 point vomit. And I realize that's a really hard line to ride, because if you make the other stuff strong, you end up with like Juggernaut Cosmo metas, Alioth metas, where your turn 6 is told to be irrelevant in a totally different way. And this is Marvel Snap. Everything's going to be about your turn 6. That's when the cubes double. It does matter. But there has to be a way to make those turns more fun for people. And I feel like ultimately the goal of the design team should be to make turn 6 fun. And that is my best pitch for how to do it as easily as possible.
Actually, I have one last thing to say about this. Has been my pitch for quite a while already with regard to this kind of cards, and like I used it with reference to Professor X in the past when it was like one of the most busted cards ever. Like I like to make these in my opinion, I would like these kind of like low power game winning cards to have actually zero power, because my pitch has always been these cards cannot win a lane alone, right? Like, I'm not saying that you win locations alone with one Shadow King, but like it's possible, you know. So like I want these game breaking cards to they are not allowed to win a location on their own because they have zero power. That's like my pitch for these kind of like overpowered, low statted, busted cards, you know. So something that I've been advocating for quite a while.
Moving on to Grand Arena, which is the game mode dropping in a little bit in Marvel Snap. And it is the first game mode I've looked at and thought, wow, they actually did something interesting for someone like me for once. Because like you guys know me, I'm not a big game mode guy. Like that's not really my bag in Marvel Snap. Like I appreciate a game mode, but mostly I enjoy playing Marvel Snap. And what they've done with Grand Arena is there's a format in Magic the Gathering called Commander. It's the most popular way to play Magic the Gathering. You have a sort of mascot for your deck. That is your commander. He defines what you can and cannot do. He or she or they define what you can and cannot do in your deck based on, you know, Magic has a mechanic called like mana colors. It's not really worth investigating, but it's basically you have a theme deck built around a guy that you like. That's the idea. And they have taken that idea and brought it to Marvel Snap. And I think this is pretty crucial, they're doing pre-constructed decks so that of all the game modes they've made, this one is the most easily accessed by a new player because of these pre-constructed decks. And that's not a permanent solve. I frankly wish they would put pre-constructed decks on like the CL reward track at like CL 500, because that would be a really good thing to do. But I do appreciate that they're making overtures to a new player in that way. A lot of people have been talking about how Marvel Snap isn't looking to acquire new players and how game modes should be about onboarding new players. This is the first game mode they've done where they have an explicit mechanic for new players. So with all of that said, I just wanted to get your top line thoughts on Grand Arena, because to me, this is doing two things that I've wanted Marvel Snap to do for a while. One is Marvel Snap Commander. People love the characters in this game. It is a very solid thing to have a resonant deck built around them. And the other is actual pre-constructed decks that you can just pick up and play. That's really important to me.
Yeah, so the funny thing about this mode is that, okay, so first, two things first. First thing is that if the onboarding is really very good with this game mode, they might have to actually make it a bit more semi-permanent, you know, because some people actually, you know the Magic the Gathering Commander thing. Some people only play Commander, like actually not some people, a lot of people only strictly play Commander and not any other of the formats, you know. So it's like in Hearthstone, people get onboarded to play Hearthstone because of Battlegrounds, and then they only play Battlegrounds. There are so many big Battleground streamers. You get my point. But yeah, so anyway, that could be a thing if this mode is super successful. But anyway, one other thing I want to say is also, I like the fact that because we keep harping on this topic, at least for me, which is identity gaming, right? Like the fact that like each commander, what are they called again? Leaders or whatever. I forgot what they're called.
In this mode, they're called champions.
Yeah, each champion is your identity, and your deck is built around them, pre-built or whatever you want to build yourself, and they have specific roles that they can and cannot do because they are under this champion. You know, it's like I'm this champion main. Like I said, it always just feels good to say it. Like when you play like League of Legends TFT, but I'm this main, right? Like I'm a Mr. Fantastic main. You know, it just feels, it's a feels good thing. Like identity towards what you are good at doing. So I think this mode could actually be something successful if it's done right. I'm actually interested to see how it turns out.
I also think that this is their best shot at a great game mode. That of all the game modes I've seen, like, and I don't want to make this sound like a slight to any of the other game modes, because I don't really have an objection to them in specific so much as like I like playing normal Marvel Snap, and all the stuff that takes me away from playing normal Marvel Snap is awkward. And so a lot of those other game modes feel like Marvel Snap minus, right? Whereas this is the first one that feels like Marvel Snap Plus. They have added something into Marvel Snap. They have added a dynamic that's really powerful with these champions that's like interesting to build around. They're new things for someone like me to play with. But what I will say is my number one worry about this game mode is card acquisition, because I think a lot of people focus on metagames in an abstract sense. But a high voltage never really has a metagame because it doesn't have a metagame enforced by people having to try hard to get cards. However, Grand Arena, based on the answers I've gotten in Ask the Team, will have 2 cards available, Mad Thinker, and I believe the other one is Mole Man. And one of them should be pretty easily obtainable. I believe you will get to choose which one you want, but I am not positive. The other one will require either a very high win rate or the expenditure of some gold. The number I got was the lowest number you'll be able to get this card at if you don't want to have like a super grindy high win rate is like 500 gold, but that it is possible to like grind out with a sufficiently high win rate, but they don't expect more than 10% of people to be able to like have that win rate. So that is my understanding of the answer that I got in Ask the Team. I am perturbed by that because Commander is fundamentally a casual mode. And if you put a win rate incentive in a Commander game mode, what you're gonna do is force people to break your game. You're gonna force people to find the broken thing. And I think that's the wrong incentive to give people with a game mode like this. And I think it's the kind of thing that can sour people on that game mode. I can see the Reddit posts already. I logged on and I kept losing to X broken combo out of Y champion deck. Why did they do this? What is there? It puts a bigger spotlight on minor flaws, where if this was more like High Voltage and it was about games played, that would be a better spot for this game mode specifically, I think.
You know the funny thing, because you mentioned breaking the game mode or breaking the meta. I feel like regardless of whether you put a card behind like any like not paywall, like a achievement wall or whatever, people will just naturally find the broken thing and then they'll want to play the broken thing regardless. As in, I get what you mean. Like if you hide a card behind that, it feels worse. But I think it's gonna happen regardless. My take on this kind of things is like when people accidentally or purposefully find a broken thing, like it's gonna happen, right? There's so many players in this game, but obviously it just feels a bit worse. I know what you're trying to say. It feels a bit worse that there's a card hidden behind like an achievement wall, but I actually don't think it'll be received that badly. Personally,
interesting.
I don't think it'll be received.
So I think first of all that they're suffering from a perception.
Also,
deficit.
500 gold is okay if you think about it. 500 gold is like okay if you actually cannot achieve it.
I don't know. I have a take on that is basically they keep making these progress bars that you can fill up 90% with effort, but going from 90 to 100 says 500 gold on it. And it's like, I feel like people might get, like, I feel like there's like it's like, all right, there are enough of these, right? Like, you got to stop making progress bars where the last bit is 500 gold, right? And I think that this is like very materially better than Kid Omega, but I also think that the fact that it comes after Kid Omega is going to inform how people react to it. And I think that largely the big mistake here is not like the specific pricing scheme. It's that there is a choice to do it in the game mode that is supposed to be for fun, right? Like, it is going to create more bad feelings about this game mode than would otherwise exist. In much the same way that, like, people are sometimes nostalgic for Deadpool's Diner now. No one was nostalgic. No one was happy with that when it first came out. Everyone was just like, oh my god, I have to go play this and get Cassandra immediately because it was the only thing that you could do to beat Arishem. And I think people are going to sort of feel the same way about, like, I have to stress this game mode. And I'd imagine that's probably very good for engagement. But I just don't know how many times you can do that. How many times you can make a bar like this that is like technically passable, but for most of the player base will not be in terms of win rate, and have that be an okay thing to do. I also think that the last people who need new cards for free are the people who are getting 70% win rates or whatever win rate you have to like unlock this card for free to play. Those are the last people on earth who need free cards. Like, they do not need that.
Let's just hope Moleman and Mad Thinker are not somehow superbly OP. I don't think.
Well, the good news is they look pretty bad, so we've got that going for us.
I was just scrolling when you were saying stuff, and I was just like, okay, these don't look like the nuts. So I think it should be fine.
The Snap World Cup is happening, courtesy of the team that brought you the Golden Gauntlets. They are going to do multiple World Cup qualifiers, and of course, an actual World Cup event. The details are all on the official Marvel Snap Discord. There's also a press release if you guys want to go check that out. But I want to talk about how it's going to affect one of our own, which is Lamby Series, who really cares about tournaments existing.
Okay, yeah. So guys, the funny thing, okay, it's not even funny. I keep saying the funny thing. It's not even funny. This is the cool part. Okay, so the cool part about Snap World Cup and Golden Gauntlet 1 and Golden Gauntlet 2 is like my involvement in the game just went from like 30% to 130% every single time there's a competition, you know. So you guys know what happened Golden Gauntlet 1 and 2. I was like 2 weeks straight of Marvel Snap. This one, Snap World Championship. I know the first one is like, well, I think it's August or something like that. Yeah, I'm going hard again, man. Like every time there's a competition, I will want to win or like do well. It's just in my blood to try and do well in these kind of things. Like, so do expect me to stream a bit of the game again to make sure that I'm on par with some of you guys who I know absurdly good at the game. The last time I played Golden Gauntlet 1 and 2, I got reality checked so hard. I was like, okay, so these guys are good, and
People are
I am
better
not
now,
as
yeah.
good as I used to
Yeah.
be. I got reality checked. So, but the funny thing is, I know I can definitely hold my own. It's just that like to be completely like to hold your own against the best of the best in Marvel Snap is very interesting because the game is like 99% casual players, but that top 1%, you will feel it when you play against them. You will feel it. I mean, I was there once, so I know, but you will feel it, you know. So it's that kind of game. And that being said, there's like 3 qualifiers, I believe. And from what I heard from Gani himself, he says that anyone can join any
Correct.
qualifier. It's just the time zones. So like there's 3 Asia, NA, EU, different time zones to like cater to everyone. But at the end of the day, if you are somehow like someone that really just wants to play everything and have the highest chance, you can play everything. And I'm not sure what the top cut is, but like you can try 3 times basically.
Yeah. You have 3 shots if you're willing to obliterate your sleep schedule. So, you know, be my guest, and we all know that you're probably going to take all 3 of those shots if you need to.
I would try.
That's
I'll take
the
2 for
8
sure. I'll take 2.
that's
Or just get it in the first try. Just get it in the first try, man. Get it in the first try. I think I heard you
yes.
get to go like 5-1
You're only gonna
and
need
you're
1.
done.
It's fine. Yeah,
5-1 and done, guys. 5-1 and done. Yes.
All right. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, Lamby, for being here, and take us out of here.
All right, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.